repeatedly that Rodgers is, quote, a complicated fella. That was at an event at Lambeau Field last week while referencing the late Packers general manager Ted Thompson. So there is obviously a lot there to unpack, and the good news is we have exactly the right people to unpack it, beginning with Adam Schefter, Neek, and D. Wood with us here for the moment as well. Okay, Schefter, where do we stand now? Mark Murphy makes these comments, everyone in the world trying to interpret them.
Well, Greeny, I don't think it changes anything, and I don't think we're going to have an answer or a resolution until sometime shortly before or during training camp. There are a couple inflection points here. That would be one. The other one would be if Aaron Rodgers decides not to show up to training camp, and then we go into the season or the end of the preseason, will he then show up for the start of the regular season? So does he show up for training camp? Does he show up for the start of the regular season? Those are the two questions that I think people are wondering about and seeing how he'll execute them. But what I've noticed this offseason is that Matt LaFleur, the Packers head coach, has said everything right, has handled it the right way. The general manager, Brian Gutekunst, has said the right things. And then Mark Murphy has had completely different mixed messages where he's saying one week, the less said the better. And as you mentioned, calling Aaron Rodgers a complicated fella. Now, that in and of itself is not a crime and it's not horrible. But again, there's no need to say anything other than Aaron Rodgers means everything to this franchise, and our Super Bowl hopes are riding on whether he comes back. He's that important. We want him back. We'll do anything to get him back, and that wasn't what that comment was. I don't know that it offended Aaron Rodgers terribly, but I know that certain people were wondering why he made such a comment.
Absolutely, and I would imagine that the other two gentlemen on our panel here were among those people wondering. D. Wood, when you first saw it, Mark Murphy calls Aaron Rodgers a, quote, complicated fella. What was your immediate reaction, D. Wood?
Man, what the hell is he talking about, man? It sounded like a boomer type comment. That's the way it sounded to me. Because if you're Mark Murphy, and you already touched upon it, everyone else has been complimentary of Aaron Rodgers, has been saying all the right things. And then you're going to come out and say, oh, he's a complicated fella. Man, Aaron Rodgers make the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers is the face of the Green Bay Packers. And what we have is a situation with this complicated fella is he's dug in. So why in the world would you make any comment through the media that could further complicate matters? It just makes no sense to me. And it just shows, to me, it just gives you a glimpse of how some front office people think in this era of player empowerment.
So there are a lot of things in this that don't feel like they make sense. Dominique Foxworth, make sense of them for us.
That's the problem, is I can't make sense of this particular decision. I think that we ascribe a lot of intelligence to people who have titles like president or general manager or head coach or CEO. Anyone who's leading something, we assume that they're smart and thoughtful. But this proves to me that, at least in this incident, Mark Murphy is not, because I can honestly defend most of the decisions that Brian Gutekunst has made. I think that even drafting Jordan Love makes sense considering Aaron Rodgers' age at the time and his performance, frankly, in the previous years. All the picks that they have made sense to me. And obviously what Matt LaFleur is saying and doing right now, it makes perfect sense to me. I understand what he's trying to accomplish. But I don't quite get what Mark Murphy thought he was going to accomplish by a couple weeks ago, saying that no one should say anything. Okay, maybe you want to keep Aaron Rodgers, who's not outspoken, keep him quiet. You don't want to make this any worse. Then coming out and saying he's a complicated fella. So what are you thinking? When you're opening your mouth to say Aaron Rodgers is a complicated fella, are you thinking that this is somehow going to endear me to Aaron Rodgers? This is going to bring him back? Or this is going to push him away? I'm just not quite sure the purpose of doing that. What he accomplished, what was his goal as leader of the Packers by saying that nothing good can come of this?
So we can't figure out, Shefty, what exactly Mark Murphy's thought process is here. What, if anything, do we know about Aaron's thought process here? We've seen him in Hawaii. He did the interview with Kenny Mayne, which I think he did out of great respect for Kenny. I don't think he was looking for an outlet to say the things that he said there. What, if anything, do we know about what he's thinking, what he's planning, what he wants right now?
See, I think it's interesting because we've heard his former teammate James Jones comment, relax. But I've also gotten texts that say Aaron is strong as hell on this. So I don't know which is right. And I think that brings us back to where we were before. We're going to find out shortly before training camp. And again, my understanding is that the Packers officials still are trying to go meet with him again. Maybe they've already done that, for all we know, post-mandatory minicamp. But I think the comments of Mark Murphy, to bring it back to that, I think this puts him right in the mix. Up until now, people have wondered about how Aaron Rodgers feels about the general manager, Brian Gutekunst, and I think that this puts Mark Murphy square in that conversation, which he probably should have been all along. When Aaron Rodgers is upset with the people and the culture, I think it starts at the top. It's not just the general manager, and I think these comments now put Mark Murphy square in that conversation of that circle of people that Aaron Rodgers is not entirely happy with in Green Bay.
Remember, that's the one unique situation, Neek, where they don't have an owner. They don't have a Robert Kraft to try and sue things either. Go ahead, Neek, final word.
I just figured it out. I know what Mark Murphy's trying to do. Some of these young kids these days, when they're trying to get a date, they neg the person. So you no longer give them compliments because you think that's not going to work. You start saying negative things. It's called negging them. And you say, oh, you're not that pretty. You're not that smart. And maybe that'll bring them around. Mark Murphy is out here trying to neg Aaron Rodgers, and it ain't going to work.
Okay, we have finally figured it out. Outstanding.
You're
Everyone
welcome,
sit
Brandon.
tight. We got so much more as we roll along here, and Diana's going to jump in a moment as well. Since he was the #1 pick in the NFL draft, Baker Mayfield has been under the microscope. We'll tell you why that is both unusual and maybe unfair. And then Russell Wilson says is off a major factor. Speaking of injuries, obviously that is the overwhelming concern for the Brooklyn Nets, who entered this postseason as an overwhelming favorite and now face huge problems. No Kyrie tonight, no James Harden. So I guess I'll ask you this question directly. If those guys cannot contribute in this series, can the Nets win?
In the series, it's tough. I mean, you're going to need KD to average 40, 45 a game. And I say that because he's going to have to score a lot, but they're going to need help from Blake Griffin and Joe Harris to play out of their mind and just big-time basketball, because right now, I mean, we're seeing how physical PJ Tucker and the Bucks are with KD. So the game plan, if there's no Kyrie, if there's no Harden, they're just going to hit him and try to wear him down, get him frustrated, and get him out of his game. And now put the onus on the others who's left for the Nets to win the series. So I think the important factor is if there's no Kyrie, but that other guy, James Harden, runs this show, and he makes the game easier for the Nets and the others. So they need James Harden back for sure.
Well, you've been a star player in this league, so you understand the mentality and the responsibility that those guys feel. How would you imagine, how much pressure would you imagine a guy like Harden is feeling to get back out there, especially when he sees Kyrie get hurt?
Especially with the social media era to add to that. It's a lot of pressure. And, I know he wants to get out there. There are the reports that he tried to work out to see where he was, and he's not quite there. And you don't want to get in a situation, Greeny, like the Lakers did with AD. You understand why AD tried to play. He wanted to do for his team and keep his team alive. But if Harden comes back too early and he's not ready and he goes down for sure the rest of the series, if not the playoffs, the Nets will not have a chance at all.
Yeah, AD came back in an elimination game. This is not that tonight for the Nets. You are coming back a little later in this hour. Vince Carter, stay close. Thank you very much. But we go from one superstar to another, and that one, of course, is Aaron Rodgers. Let's talk about him. Let's talk about his boss. Packers president Mark Murphy has said a lot about Aaron Rodgers over the last few months. In January, a day after the Bucs knocked out the Packers from the playoffs, Mark Murphy said Aaron Rodgers will be back. He's our leader. Then on March 30th at the league meeting, he offered no comment, Murphy did, when asked about restructuring Rodgers' contract that would have freed up cap space for the team. Then June 5th, in his monthly column, Murphy stated, quote, "The situation we face with Aaron Rodgers has divided our fan base. The less both sides say publicly, the better." And then about a week later,